The following podcast may contain adult language and conversations revolving around situations not suitable for immature audiences. Spoilers and general political incorrectness can often be expected, so listener discretion is advised.
They must be destroyed on sight!
Alright, we're back for another episode of They Must Be Destroyed on Sight. This is officially episode number 49, so we're just one episode away from big number 50. But we got a pretty big monumental movie to discuss this time around as well, so we are going to be getting into that later. But first, I'm your host, Lee Russell, joined by my two dashing co-hosts, both born of German expressionism, but in very different ways. Daniel Harper, how are you doing, sir?
Doing all right. And I like to think of myself as hyphenating rather than dashing, personally.
Oh, okay. Right on. And my other co-host, Paul Romali. How are you doing, sir?
Hi. I'm doing well.
You sound like a commercial for a 1950s soap of some sort.
Yep.
You have bad stains?
Hi, I'm Paul, and you need Paul's washing powder.
Yep. Special washing powder, now with bleach.
Yep, I like it.
Mm-hmm. But, we'll be getting into 1931's M, directed by Fritz Lang here in a little while. But before we do that, we're going to get into our sort of customary what we've been watching, purchasing, etc. in the last little while. So I'll throw it to you, Daniel, for whatever you've been up to in the last week or so.
I watched a couple of movies, one of which was on your top list last year, I believe. I saw Turbo Kid,
All right.
2015. I know why you love it. I didn't love it as much as you did.
Okay.
You know, I just, the only thing I'm going to say about it really is, if you're going to make a giant throwback to the cheapo films made in the early 80s, why not make a good one, you know? If I want to watch Solar Babies, I can just watch Solar Babies. I don't have to, watch this. That's a little bit unfair. I get why this was made. It's kind of a mixture of those kind of early 80s sci-fi, post-apocalyptic Mad Max ripoffs with slasher gore, really heavy gore stuff, which I liked a lot. And then basically a mumblecore movie kind of built into the middle of it. And it's the mumblecore aspect that I liked the least.
Mumblecore, did you say?
Yes.
Okay, I never heard of that.
Yeah, basically that's the two protagonists staring forlornly at one another and not actually saying anything intelligent and just talking.
I was going to say, that's me every day with somebody.
Yeah, pretty much. It's pretty much like I thought I was watching Paul and all that. Basically, the two leads, they're not bad in the role. Certainly, the young lady who plays Apple, I think she's kind of on the right mark, but I think ultimately the film just kind of suffers whenever we're not either watching really awesome practical gore effects or kind of silly early 80s parody sci-fi stuff. I think everything else just kind of falls by the wayside a little bit.
Do you think it is a little too long? If it was truncated a little bit, it would be better?
I mean, I hate to use the too long thing. I mean, I think that, if this was an hour, I think that you wouldn't have time for that. I think ultimately it feels padded. But I think ultimately it's like, I accept that from the early 80s versions of this because they were just doing the best they could and making the film they wanted to make, and just kind of like, you just kind of accept that like having 30 minutes of padding is part of what the thing is. For stuff made today, I expect you, if you're going to do this, I expect you to bring a little bit more like psychological complexity or at least interest to it, I do think that the ending of the film basically works. I think that I kind of left the film with a kind of pleasant memory, but it's not something I'm ever going to revisit again. So now that I've shit all over one of your favorite movies, Lee.
Yeah. Well, Paul. So who are we bringing in as our new permanent host?
I think we should bring in my breast connoisseur, Greg. I think he would be fun.
No, that's fine. I can definitely see why people wouldn't like it. It's just one of those things one of those movies that strikes me in a certain way and works for me, and I can totally understand the criticisms of it. So totally fair.
It kind of reminded me of a little bit of that Kung Fury kind of stuff with the '80s kind of chaos going on, and I think everyone has the kind of same ring that if they tried to make that a full-length film, everyone would have just got sick of it. 45 minutes into it. I mean, it would have been a little bit too much, so it was good that film was short, so people could have just got bombarded with everything, and then it went away. So it was like, yes, good. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm gonna ask myself a new question now. Who are my two new permanent co-hosts?
Well, I do think that Turbo Kid's way better than Kung Fury, personally.
Definitely it is, yeah.
I never saw it,
question.
so I'm not comparing the films. Mr. Touchy Lee, I'm not comparing the films, so, I just saw pictures of Turbo Kid. It seems interesting.
Well, that's more research than you usually do when you're watching movies, so
True.
kudos to you.
Thank you. I will never watch that film now because of you.
All right, Daniel, continue, sir.
I also watched, and this is the only other thing I'm going to mention, because I did get to do the little intermission thing where I talked about the other 20 things I watched last week. But I watched a really good movie that may be on my short list for best of the year. Actually, it's called Mystery Road. This one is also streaming on Netflix. This is a kind of a crime film, kind of a western, kind of a character drama. It's actually from Australia. It's an Australian director who's actually half Aboriginal. So he's half black, and the lead in this film is also a black man, and the kind of racial politics are I don't want to say front and center, but they're definitely in the film. The fact that he's from that racial minority is definitely played in the film. It comes from that perspective. It is kind of from that this world. It's a crime film that's set in this very small town in this very kind of impoverished region of Australia. Very rural. It really works as a Western. This one is about 2 hours long. You can see the criticism of it being too long. Personally, I think it feels just right. I think it needs that little bit of extra flab, that little bit of extra breathing room to sell some of the kind of isolation of this region and to sell some of the atmosphere of it. It's a slow burn, as you'd call it. I don't want to give away too much more about the plot. I'd actually really like, Lee, for you to watch this at some point if you haven't already.
You've already piqued my interest. I want to watch this.
Yeah,
now.
It's streaming on Netflix. It's absolutely worth your time. I think I'll just wait until somebody else sees it and talk about it more, because there is some really interesting stuff going on in the film. It's the sort of film where, and I without giving anything away, casting is destiny. And you'll understand what I mean by that. Just don't look up anything else about the film. Just start watching it,
okay.
And you'll suddenly see a face you recognize. And that character is playing exactly the person you think he is, but not necessarily in the way you might expect. So
is it
I'll just leave it at that. It is Carrot Top. How did you know? Oh my God.
Good.
Oh my God.
Like halfway through, it stops being this kind of slow meditation on crime in rural Australia and becomes like a prop comedy routine. My God.
If there was one person who, if I had to watch them on screen for more than 5 minutes, that would make me physically vomit, it's got to be Carrot Top. I mean.
That's it. We're watching Chairman of the Board next week.
I just saw that.
Shaun of the Dead, Chairman of the Board.
Yep.
Oh.
Psych, we're not actually going to talk about Dawn of the Dead. We're talking about Chairman of the Board.
Okay. Paul, anything you've watched in the last little while?
Well, it's a little bit different. It's not really a film. Well, it is a film, but it's not more of a documentary of a man who lived in Alaska by himself. He moved out in '68, and when he was 51, built his cabin and everything and lived out there using only tools that he made and stuff. It's called Alone in the Wilderness. It was actually aired in the 90s on PBS, and I bought part 1 and part 2 of it because there was an expanded documentary for it. And I've just been watching the living craps out of those two things. I paid $60 for them, but I don't think I wasted a single penny.
Right on.
And it's very motivating. There's not a time where I don't watch one of them and get up and need to go stack wood or chop wood or clean the house or do something. And if you complain that maybe your life's a little too hard, you watch this, go, no, it's not actually. That's pretty easy. It's one of those. It's one of those kind of deals. And then I watched Sundown today with Bruce Campbell and David Carradine.
No, I don't think I've heard of that one.
Oh yeah, go check it out. It's a great film.
Is it a vampire film or?
It is a vampire film. You are very clever.
How would you figure that out?
Well, you gave me the two main actors, and you just gave me the title, and I kind of put 2 and 2 together there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was guessing romantic comedy myself, but
It is kind of like a romantic comedy.
Okay, so we got Bruce Campbell. He's wearing tidy whities. David Carradine's in the closet, autoerotic asphyxiating himself.
You're getting close. It's close. It's actually surprisingly close. Carrot
Carradine plays a man with a chin fetish.
Yeah, it was shot a couple years ago in Taiwan or wherever where David Carradine died. Oh wait, it's not a movie. It's actually
a documentary. Yeah, that's actually what it was.
All right.
Go down on Sundown.
Yeah, okay. Anything else, Paul?
We're gonna go with no on that one.
All right.
I did fast forward M. That counts. So there you go.
It counts. Yeah, it counts. Yeah. I myself, I'm waiting for my one purchase I've made in the last little while since I bought that big batch of Italian crime films last month. I'm waiting for the original Alien to show up. I ordered that, so I'm looking forward to that. That's one of those ones where I should have it. I should have had it years ago, but it was like, back in the day when we were spoiled and we had DVD stores and stuff. Why the fuck would I buy stuff I could get anytime when I'm buying obscure shit and all this rare stuff at the DVD store?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and then the DVD store disappeared, and I'm like, fuck, I'm screwed.
Yeah.
It's like
I have Aliens 1 and 2 on Laserdisc, but I don't have them on VHS or DVD.
Yeah.
I actually liked Alien Resurrection way more than I thought I would.
I'm gonna have to find a new co-host.
I liked it more than I thought I would. That's not really a compliment, though, technically.
Okay, I'll give you a pass there because Daniel and I were discussing this off air. How he was like, "Oh, you didn't just buy the whole big Alien anthology set?" I was like, "No, I don't like the other films. I just want Alien."
And Aliens is.
I don't even like Aliens all that much.
No.
I mean, it doesn't work for me because it's just. I mean, it's a good action film. It's a great action film, but I don't need it.
I'm not really too big into sequels. I mean, obviously, Lee and I know that two of the main things that we watched growing up, like Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, are sequel chaos. But I'm not a big sequel fan. The only sequel that I actually thought I was going to really hate and that I actually like it was Predator 2.
I like Predator 2 too. I think it's
because Predator 1 is such a great film. As soon as I knew they were making Part 2, I'm like, no, I don't want to watch that crap, And I'm like, oh, I like this film. This is pretty good.
I think Danny Glover's woefully miscast in that film. But
how about Predator 2 and RoboCop 2, future episode of They Must Be Destroyed on Sight.
I like that. I like that because I actually like RoboCop 2 as well. So. It would actually be a nice little sort of defense of those two films that I think are unfairly maligned by general fan culture. So
right.
Just don't ask me to defend RoboCop 3.
I've never even seen it. Wow, I didn't even know they made RoboCop 3.
They did. It was PG-13.
Holy fuck. Yeah.
It's a piece of shit. Yeah.
Okay, don't watch it. Okay, I got you. Do not watch that film.
No, never watch it. No, just don't. It didn't.
Yeah. I've seen the TV series, and the TV series is better than RoboCop 3.
Oh.
I believe it.
Did you guys watch the new RoboCop movie?
The remake, yeah. And you know what? I didn't hate that film.
Good.
But
I have not seen that.
It has none of the charm or wit or anything of the original RoboCop. It has no. It's just an action film. It's just an action sci-fi film. A really good one, but it has no meat to it at all. It's just bullshit.
I was looking through a couple things that I had and seeing some of the remakes of films that are out now, and I'm pretty sure that if I could get away with it, I would punch Michael Bay in the face.
I think you'd have to stand in line. But
yeah, I noticed that though. I'm not the only one who thinks that.
Yeah. Okay, but so yeah, I've got that, and it's going to show up any day now. Probably Monday it'll probably show up. The only thing is I was telling Daniel offline, I had a little mini sort of Jason Statham direct-to-video marathon kind of. Well, I guess The Bank Job was actually in theaters, but I'd seen that before, and but I watched for the first time The Mechanic, which is like a remake of the old Charles Bronson film from the 70s, and it actually wasn't too bad. It was pretty competent. I mean, Jason Statham's really good, like just about in everything he does. He's actually really good. He usually just gets in really shitty films, but the mechanic was pretty good acting in it. Wasn't a lot of over-the-top bullshit that you usually see in modern action films. It sort of stuck to the original fairly closely. I do kind of nitpick every time I see someone shoot a leaking gas from a car and make it explode. That kind of always pisses me off, and that's actually kind of central to the ending of the film. So I didn't like that, and also, I actually kind of don't like the twist at the end of the film where, spoilers, Jason Statham actually survives. I felt that kind of cheapened the film a bit. But it was cool to have Statham in it. Donald Sutherland's in the first fourth of the film or so. Well, actually, not even that much. But it's always nice to see Donald Sutherland in something. And, so that's pretty much all I watched. Unless we have any other business, we can move on.
The only thing that I did pick up is I picked up a 10 compilation of Hitchcock films.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I didn't really get the chance to open it and sit down and check them out yet, but as soon as I saw it, I had to have it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, so is this like a compilation of like his better known stuff, or is this like his early?
I think it's more of his lesser known stuff. The only thing on it that I actually, when I perused it, because I have a couple different collections, the only one that I could definitely point that I knew was the Rear Window.
Okay.
The rest of the stuff is very unknown to me, so it'd be interesting to sit down and just take a night and watch, just go through it all and check it out.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't seem to realize that Hitchcock was making tons of films back in the silent film days. I mean, and a lot of that stuff now is like on the sort of Mill Creek sets and stuff,
right.
Like a lot of direct to public domain fucking Hitchcock stuff. Like I've got a handful of shitty prints of Hitchcock public domain stuff.
Right, which is nice that transfers into what we're about to talk about too, where that you started in the silent era and you're moving into audio like Hitchcock did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I guess we could just segue right into that.
Boom!
Dankeschön.
We're going to be talking about M from 1931, directed by Fritz Lang. This is actually his first film with sound in it, after directing about a dozen or so silent films from about 1921 or so. It was written by Thea von Harbo, who was his wife at the time, soon to be divorced, and we'll talk more about that, I think. She did most of the script. Lang also had part in the script, and a lot of this was based on an article by Egon Jacobsen. It stars Peter Lorre as Hans Beckett, Ellen Widman as Frau Beckman, Inge Landgut as Elsie Beckman, Otto Winnerk as Inspector Karl Lohmann, Theodor Luce as Inspector Gruber, Gustav Grundens as Schrenker, Frederick Nab as Franz, Fritz Odmar as the cheater, Paul Kemp as the pickpocket with 6 watches, Theo Lingen as Baron Fanger, and I'm just going to stop right there because I've already.
Why don't you just call him Finger Banger?
Finger Banger.
Right there.
But yeah, I'm going to stop there because I've already probably incited the Germans to start yet another world war at that point. Yeah, Daniel, you have, from what I understand, a fairly extensive little synopsis of this one, so I'll let you go.
All right. This is M, 1931. The film opens on a scene in which several small children are playing a sing-song game. They make reference to a boogeyman as the camera pans to a washing woman, obviously the mother of one of the young girls. After a slice of life sequence demonstrating her working-class life, we are introduced to the killer, whom we will later learn is named Hans Beckert, and is portrayed by Peter Lorre in his very first starring role. Beckert's introduction comes as a menacing silhouette against a column containing a reward notice for the unknown murderer. And if all this is sounding incredibly German expressionist to you, you're probably envisioning it properly. We soon are enveloped by a sense of oppressive unease with occasional lapses into pure panic, as we see how the city at large is responding to these murders. Lynchings are common, the police are incredibly overworked, and the killer is even sending taunting letters to the newspaper. The cops, in a last-ditch effort to find the killer, stage frequent raids on known criminal establishments, which is understandably bad for business for organized crime. Bolstered by our look at their bottom line, the capitalist impulse saves the day, and the mob bosses work together to essentially crowdsource the finding of the killer by enlisting an army of beggars. The strategy pays off, and the murderer is eventually trapped like a caged animal inside a large blocked office complex. In the biggest set piece of the film, we see an army of professional criminals work to systematically search the area as the panicked Beckert seeks any avenue for escape. In the end, Beckert is captured, but the criminal dragnet leaves behind a single man to be captured by the, as it turns out, not entirely incompetent police force. Beckert is taken to an abandoned schnapps factory, where he is given defense counsel and put to a kangaroo court in a sequence that more or less defines mob rule, as the members of the criminal community, put out of their work by the increased police presence, lay out not only moral indignation against Beckert, but also that of economic insecurity. Beckert pleads for his life, claiming that he is driven to perform these terrible acts due to factors beyond his control, but mercy is not granted him as the mob seeks to tear him apart. In the end, Beckert is saved, at least for now, by the police, who have discovered the place of the faux trial by clever but probably unethical manipulation of the man left behind in the office complex. The film ends with the woman whose child was killed by Beckert looking at camera and pleading with the audience to please won't someone think of the children.
Nice. So yeah, this film does start sort of making mention that there have been killings beforehand. Apparently, like, the latest victim is like the 8th or 9th in the series. The entire town is sort of gripped in fear here, and they make no bones about who the killer is. They show you right off that it's Peter Lorre. He's the killer. That's not the important thing. It's not a murder mystery. This is actually credited as by a lot of people as being sort of the first sort of crime procedural and serial killer film, essentially. Even though even back then the term serial killer did not exist, but
Right.
But this is definitely the sort of genesis of that sort of film genre. Yeah, actually, I'll go over to you first, Paul, and ask what your sort of general opinion of this was.
Oh, I definitely liked this film. Was it Hall of the Mountain King? The killer kept on Hall of the Mountain King? And that's one of the ways the blind man got him. I like that twist. I definitely enjoyed the idea of hiring the beggars, kind of like, little surveillance cameras all over the street, kind of keeping watch. I really did like that. The film overall is really well done. It's very interesting that Fritz Lang almost didn't do this film. He was very angry at the idea of doing it in audio. One of the things that I noticed in the film, I found that out a little bit later after I spoke with a friend. The one thing I noticed in the film that gave it a different presence, which the remake definitely just blew that out the window, the lack of sound in certain spots where you think it would be cussly and bustly and loud and everything is dead quiet. And it gives the film a completely different feel. It takes you out of the world that you're in and puts you back into a different world again. And it's very interesting, especially when the chase sequence is going on. There should have been lots of noise, and there wasn't. It was kind of definitely weird. And Fritz Lang played with silence very well in the film.
Yeah, and that was sort of a happy accident as well, because 2/3 of this film were shot with sound, but the remaining third was pretty much silent. And at the time, a lot of this had to do with the fact that licensing fees for sound equipment were very prohibitive, like very expensive. They were just trying to keep costs down more than anything else, and Fritz Lang sort of worked around it, and he actually liked how kind of unnerving and how much it kind of focuses you on what's going on. And so he just used it to his advantage and made it work. So it's
very nice to have Peter Lorre as the killer, to give you the sense of, look, this isn't a giant marauding killer. This isn't a giant. This is a guy that you would never expect to do anything. He's just a normal guy. You know what I mean? A small, frail man.
Yeah, short little, round, bug-eyed man. Yeah,
exactly. That kind of interesting kind of concept on it. It's a very good film. I definitely I would like to buy this one. I noticed I went through my collections and I don't have any of it. I don't have a single copy of it. So I want to know what kind of special editions or anything they have out there. I would definitely like to pick it up.
Well, actually, I'll just move to you, Daniel. What your sort of first thoughts of this are?
Well, obviously it's a piece of shit. I mean, I understand that.
I will say there's no breasts in it, so Greg, don't watch it.
The hard thing with doing a film like this is it is like 85 years old. We've been, there's only 85 years worth of scholarship on this, and when trying to talk about it is and try to find something new to say about it is difficult. It's a masterpiece. One of the things that I'm struck by in this film, just kind of trying to rewatch it, and I think which Paul puts his finger on, having not seen it before, is how much of the artifice of it you actually don't notice by today's standards how much of the kind of technique of the film has just been absorbed into modern cinema. To the degree that what was really new and avant-garde at the time is almost invisible today, which is something you find with quite a few of the kind of old masterpieces. This usually gets on the list of like top 10 greatest movies ever made. I wouldn't have any problem with somebody putting it on that list. I echo pretty much everything Paul said. I think that the sequences without sound are really haunting and evocative. Like when it does go without sound, especially watching it today, if you watch like a digital version, because it is, I mean, you can watch this for free on the Internet Archive, like you know, it's in the public domain, so you can just stream it online. I think a first-time viewer might literally just go, "Wait a minute, why am I not? Is there something wrong with my digital copy?" You know, we're so used to hearing sound, and at the time in 31, I mean, sound movies were only 4 years old at the time, and so the idea that, you know, at the time, most talkies were literally just talkies. They just, you know, basically there was this like big lumbering microphone that you had to hide behind a potted plant or something, as we see in Singing in the Rain. You know, you see basically that process of moving to sound, with how cumbersome that was. And so the idea that we are kind of watching people walk around and talk, and that it does feel very modern in its staging, and it doesn't feel locked into position where you have to like really pay attention to where a microphone is at all times, it does speak to Lang's directorial talent. The silent sequences actually work. I mean, I think to audiences at the time, they would have felt right at home. And then the fact that like the leitmotif of Hail the Mountain King, or the other kind of footsteps and that sort of thing. Lang is definitely doing some interesting things with sound here. Like at the time, it would have been like, oh, I'm watching a silent film. You'd get lulled into that old silent, you know, kind of idea, and then suddenly the sound just comes back in. It's a really skillful use of the technology, really.
Like you mentioned, there's a couple techniques. There's actually a lot of techniques in this film that are just sort of taken for granted now. But at this point, voiceover narration was very, very rare in film. This was something that was just being introduced to film at this time. So that's actually it would probably be kind of jarring even for audiences at that time, because they'd probably be used to sort of title cards in between scenes, right, saying what's going on, saying dialogue. Also, the idea of a musical theme being attached to a character signifying when they're there. From what I understand doing research, this was actually kind of the first time this was ever used in film. So when you get Edvard Grieg's Hall of the Mountain King, it's very creepy too, because he's essentially, you know, sort of nervously kind of whistling that. And actually that wasn't Peter Lorre whistling that. That was Fritz Lang, because apparently Peter Lorre couldn't fucking do that to save his life.
I did notice it, like a little bit now, it didn't look like it matched up well, but that's fine.
So one kind of interesting thing about this is you don't really see Peter Lorre much on the actual film. Like he's only in the film for maybe about 10-15 minutes at the most. Like his character really doesn't have a lot of screen time, and I think the film honestly makes a pretty overt insistence of not really giving you a central character. There really isn't a central character. Like, you do get the police chief, you do get Peter Lorre, you do get the criminals, but it jumps between them all the time, as well as the common people. And I think the film tries to make more of a point of society as a whole going in a certain direction, as opposed to sort of the quest of a certain character or the story of a certain character. Because this is a very thinly veiled critique of Germany at the time. Fritz Lang was essentially kind of a socialist Jew in the rising Nazism of Germany, and this is pretty much a critique of what he saw was happening in society at the time. And it's a very sort of dour, down look on not only the common people, but everyone in the police force, everyone in the higher up in government. So he's kind of commenting on society as a whole. Actually, I'll probably get more into that, but any of your guys' thoughts on that sort of? I
definitely like their play on suspicion and fear along with the regular people on the streets. Every time they see something they don't understand or they suspect, they call a policeman, and they, like when they harass the old man. Like, those little things were a mob mentality. Never underestimate the power of stupid people in number or scared people in number, or anything like that. You know what I mean? It's a pretty nice play on morality too. I mean, it does point the finger at people and say, I'm bad, but you're bad too, so who's the worst? You know, things like, I mean, there's a lot of playing on different topics that you find in many films that come later. So I definitely think this is a groundbreaker in a lot. When I did watch it, because of the fact that Hall of the Mountain King was the theme to The Killer, it automatically, maybe this isn't exactly the same kind of concept, but it automatically made me think of Jaws. Yeah, how the Jaws has its own theme, and when it happens, you know what's going to come. He's there, that kind of thing. Actually, it was a she, so I should say, sorry, Jaws, you're a she.
But it is a sound signature. It is, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Later in the movie, when he's speaking of his problems that he has, one of the things is he gets haunted a lot by the victims, stuff like that, and it automatically made me think of American Werewolf in London, how David Notting is haunted by the people he kills the whole time, and it just makes me think of that. So there's a lot of things planted from this film through the annals of films afterwards.
Yeah, this film actually does. I did spot a lot of stuff that it did kind of influence, obviously, but it actually, if you look at the IMDb, there is a long fucking list of stuff that this film directly inspires or is referenced by.
Like Chairman of the Board.
Yeah, exactly. Carrot Top. He made his whole career off M. But no, it did directly influence films within sort of the same era, like The Third Man and The Lady Killers. Then up to 1960, Peeping Tom. There's definitely when you're getting to the psychosis of a killer, and that sort of comes out. And then you can go right up to Dark City from '98, where you definitely see a lot, if not thematically, at the very least, image-wise, big time influences from Fritz Lang in those films.
Well, Lang in general as a filmmaker is basically the foremost man of the German Expressionist movement, which then goes on. Film noir essentially is German Expressionism just adapted to sort of the crime genre, and kind of dumbed down slightly based on don't want to make a moral judgment, but they're not quite doing the same thing. But film noir is kind of taking that aesthetic and then putting it into this crime genre, and then also all the stuff that's ever been influenced by film noir, in a way, is derived directly from him in a lot of ways. I mean, this is the proto film noir film in a lot of ways.
He did do several crime films, silent crime films. But his previous two films before this, which were both commercial failures, were Metropolis and Frau im Mond, which I think translates to Woman on the Moon or something like that.
Moon Woman.
Yeah, Moon Woman, something like that. He moved on and did this crime film because he liked the subject matter, he liked the idea of it. This became his favorite film that he made. When he finally did flee Germany, and he fled Germany I think 2 years after Peter Lorre did. Peter Lorre, he got his ass out of Germany right after he finished filming this, basically, and became a star in Hollywood. Fritz Lang fled 2 years later, I guess it was, and also became a major director in Hollywood, doing film noirs, and he did a lot of classic film noirs in Hollywood too.
Yeah, what I find fascinating, and I've been not talking about the Nazi stuff just to let you guys in it. I can only talk so much about the Nazis, really. But there is this kind of interesting bit that I kind of found on the Wikipedia page when I was doing some the cursory research I did for this episode, where Goebbels actually offered Lang basically to be the head of the German film, or UFA. I think he offered him the head of UFA. Basically, Lang's like, oh shit, I got to get out of here. If I'm getting offered a good job, I got to leave right now.
If they notice me, that's a problem.
Yeah, and essentially it's he left a couple of months later, he had to wait on his wife or something.
Yeah, my great grandparents came over in '31, and my grandfather was born in '32.
His wife, who he would divorce shortly after this, he went on to make the Testament of Dr. Mabuse. He discovered his wife apparently in bed with Indian journalist, East Indian journalist.
Like you do.
Yeah. And also, there's also the fact that she was a member of the Nazi Party, which would basically put a direct sort of schism right between the relationship. And he was so opposed to that they divorced. He left Germany. she stayed on, and she was actually, not only because of her association with Lang throughout the 20s and 30s, but afterwards with her association with the Nazi Party, was actually the most prominent female in the film industry in Germany for quite some time. Eh?
Yeah.
But and she wrote a lot of Lang's early stuff as well. So
It's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that shows she had talent though.
Oh no, she definitely was very talented, and she actually was actually in prison for a while after the war, or at the very least interned somewhere, and then she was released and then resumed her career for a while. She actually one of her films was re-released in Germany in the 50s, and she actually apparently died right after the premiere of it. She was outside and had a fall and died, but she was already in poor health at that point. Although, kind of makes you wonder if maybe someone who wasn't too sympathetic with the Nazis maybe kind of pushed her outside of the theater. I don't know.
You never know.
I did no research into any of the case as far as her death, but
you know who hates Nazis? Carrot Top. That's what I found out.
Carrot Top definitely on.
Time traveling Carrot Top doesn't kill her.
He killed her.
Kills Fritz Lang.
Damn it. He pushed her with those big
Props on
muscles.
steroids and kills the bitch.
Use that chairman of the board paycheck in order to
Oh god,
Go to
now
time
it's the
machine.
film Carrot Top, Nazi Hunter.
But yeah, there's a lot of cool real crime stuff in this that we sort of take for granted now, but we didn't really see in films. Like, we see the inspector's relationship with the criminals here. By the way, the Inspector Lohman was a character that was carried over into the Testament of Dr. Mabuse. So essentially, this film actually takes place in the same universe as the Testament of Dr. Mabuse, which is kind of cool. I like that. But you see his relationship with the criminals, where it's almost kind of jovial, like he knows all the little local scumbags in the town and stuff like that, and they have this sort of rapport with each other. You see early police science, like early CSI kind of stuff, where the guy has the big fingerprint files up on a big projector, and they're going through them monotonously. That's kind of cool. I like that. I like how the criminal underworld employs the baggers, and this sort of coalition of baggers was actually a real thing in Germany at the time, apparently. So a lot of stuff in this film was actually taken from real life stuff. Apparently, back when some of the serial killers that this is sort of loosely based on were doing their stuff back in the 20s. Apparently, from what I understand in the research I was doing here, could be wrong, but the criminals in the sort of straight, I guess, criminal elements was actually actively doing this sort of thing, looking for these people to try to get the police off their backs. So. Yeah. There is a lot of real life kind of stuff in this.
I love the psychology of a killer as they kind of break it down at the end too. I mean, this is that's got to be pretty groundbreaking stuff for the time, anyway.
Well, yeah, I think we can. I mean, unless we have anything we need to broadly talk about, I think we can sort of move towards the end of this film and talk about it a bit. Of course, there is the scene where Peter Lorre's character is finally captured, and he's taken to this abandoned distillery, and he's put in a kangaroo court. This is where it gets to a lot of the meat of the actual story, where he explains, in a really great performance, by the way, just incredibly good. And I think a lot of people kind of think, oh, it's an old movie, the performances are all kind of silly and theatric and stuff. And it's like, no, this performance is really visceral and really works really well, I think, where he's just hit his breaking point. He's been haggard and beaten, and he just starts blurting out that you can't possibly understand what it's like to be me. I can't help myself. I know I'm a monster, but I can't help it. And what right do you have to judge me? Right. You should hand me over to the police.
The really interesting part is when he's really breaking it down piece by piece. It views over the audience, and now and again you'll see some people in the room shaking their heads, I know what it is. It's hard, this and that. But yet the outcry is stronger than the sympathy, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
And at the end of the film, in general, to me anyway, because I'm a bastard, in general, is it's like, God, I wanna just tear him to pieces too. I'm for it. Screw him. We don't even it, but at the same time, that's where it breaks down this whole other barrier of the legal judicial system of just the lawyers and the courts and this asylums and how you treat people in certain ways, and it just goes overboard with emotion and chaos. It's great. The end of the film is great. However, you can't just say that you can't control yourself and you don't know what you're doing, but you're sending letters to the police, though. So maybe that in today's court wouldn't hold up very well, but like it's just the end of the film has just got so much going on.
And I'll just put a couple things in here, and then I'll just let you guys mull them over here.
And I only got this from fast forwarding.
Yeah, well there you go. But yeah, he does send letters to police, but he does want to be caught. Like he is one of those killers who realizes he is a monster. You actually see him like early on in the film making faces in the mirror, and I sort of took that as him trying to see what everyone else saw in him. Essentially, is that monster really there? Am I really that ugly? So he sends the letters to police because he does want to be caught. And there is well documented serial killers doing this. Like even when they're taunting the police, they secretly do have the desire to be caught.
Ted Bundy, for example, I believe.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing here is they make a point that with this kangaroo court that he has no choice in what he does. He is sick. He is a killer. He kills children. He cannot control his compulsion. But what is the rest of society's excuse? They actually have a choice. And this mob mentality has come up in like a fever of hatred or whatever, where they've basically boiled over to the point where they just want to hang this guy and string him up instead of due process and law. He just sort of throws it back at them in their faces that what right do you have to kill me? I have no choice in the matter. You actually do have a choice. You can choose to hand me over to the proper authorities, or you can be just as bad as me. And that there's a sort of a duality there with the increasing Nazism in the society, where I think Lang is explicitly trying to make the point that the common German of the time had a choice. They could have rejected the Nazi Party, but a lot of them didn't. And I think that is sort of the thinly veiled kind of underlying theme in this film, but that's just my personal thought on it, so I'll let you guys see if you agree or disagree with me there.
Daniel.
Well, I don't have any thoughts at all about the political meanings of this film. No, actually, I have lots of thoughts. So,
what have I done?
I think there are a lot of different ways to view this. I think it's interesting that I feel like the film actually pulls its punches in a lot of ways. I feel like it's not nearly as overt. You say it's a film that's set in 1931 Germany, and it's about a murderer, a child murderer on the streets of Berlin, and the public approach to that. And if you made that film today, it would be this obviously kind of like Nazi allegory. So the fact that this is made in 1931 makes it this like fascinating historical document. And I think some of the way that we see all levels of this society, we see this kind of sickness pervading the society, this panic and against this this contagion that they see in their midst. It's definitely meant to. To me, the fact that we spend basically the first half hour of the film just seeing the reaction of the different levels of society to this murderer is as much an indictment of the society as the kind of final scene. If we were going to rewrite this today, the fact that there's never a question about the murderer, about the fact that Peter Lorre is actually a child murderer, etc., is probably the one thing that blunts the political angle of it, because we know he's guilty. Mm-hmm. So you can view, for instance, the German society is after this contagion in their midst, which obviously are the people who are, the Jews are the contagion, the quote-unquote contagion in the midst of Germany that the people are, hunting upon, or political enemies or whatever. But in this case, so basically the metaphor is then like the Jews are a child murderer, so that's kind of a difficult thing to that's kind of metaphorical unanchoring to some degree. Which I understand that you can also view Peter Lorre's character himself. Peter Lorre, the Beckert's character, he says there's this sickness inside of me that is making me do this. So Beckert might be, there's this sickness inside of the German people, for instance, that is making us do these horrible things. You could view it that way. And then the larger society kind of reflects Beckert's inner society, inner kind of struggle, which I think is probably the way that I like to view it. I have a slightly different read on the end of the film, Lee, and I would like to go into that slightly, which is that the people doing this trial are not the kind of official heads of government. The police in this film are shown as being basically competent. If the criminal element had not done this dragnet and cornered this guy and then taken them off, the police are literally sitting in the guy's flat. They find the guy, they sit there, they're waiting on him. If he had just come home the way he was supposed to, they would have caught him. So the fact that the police are shown as basically competent is an interesting element of this film that I think gets lost in a lot of the discussion of it. What we see is that the criminals, the people who elect themselves, who put themselves up above the kind of democratically elected, the kind of set upon authorities, these people run a court without any sense of like trying to protect the rights of the accused. They're just going to rip him limb from limb. In a sense, it is, in the summary I said, this is a literal instantiation of mob rule. You know, this is the mob running a legal system. This is what happens when we don't have checks and balances and rights of the accused, and we don't have. This is literally what happens when people who set themselves up as authorities, instead of being restrained by the legal system, what they do with the power that they seize. And so, in that sense, I think that the Nazis, in this reading, are people who are seizing power from illegally, who are illegally seizing power from kind of more reasonable, rational authorities who are actually the people who should be helping run society.
Yeah, I think I'm in pretty much agreement there. I think you just articulated better than I did, essentially. Because you're right, the police are incredibly competent in this film. They're doing their jobs very well. They're just, they're overworked, so it takes them. They're just maybe a half step behind the criminal element, who have an advantage by hiring all the beggars on the street and being everywhere at every time, which the police can't do. But yeah, the head of the criminal syndicate, I guess his nickname is like Safecracker or something like that.
Safecracker,
yeah. He is, like, there's no bones about it. He is a Nazi thug. Like, he is presented as a Nazi thug. I guess Lang is making a point that, yeah, these are the people who are trying to take power through mob rule and brutality, and then he's showing the common German person getting behind that in the crowd, essentially. I didn't mean to imply that, like, everybody in the society, I guess I probably worded it properly, was, going in that direction, because he does make a point of saying, or at least showing in the film, that the police element were trying to do their jobs. The politicians, for the most part, were scheming to save their own asses. They weren't so much interested in supporting anything else other than themselves. And I guess he's trying to make a point that maybe the rest of the politicians were kind of being lazy and stuck in their ways and weren't seeing the advancing threat of Nazism, perhaps, in their society. I don't know, but
it's a pretty nuanced view. I mean, it really has. It's not there's not like one way to straightforwardly read this. I think it does have it does show a kind of full-featured society. One other element that I just want to bring up just before we kind of move on is the economic elements of this. The fact that in 1931. Germany was in the midst of the worst part of their Great Depression was during this period, and that's very clearly shown. The factory is an abandoned schnapps factory, and this is people have been driven to the criminal lifestyle because they don't have jobs anymore, and so they're just stealing from each other. The panic that's in the streets, I mean, the fact that the criminals can't do their job, can't engage in their criminal activity and make money because they're being rousted by the police because of this murderer, it's a completely reasonable thing for them to do, because otherwise they're going to starve. You do see kind of the higher criminals who are kind of using that, but the fact that there is an army of beggars on the street that you can enlist for a few pennies to go and hunt this guy down is itself an indictment of the society at large and of the.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was the number one reason why they were saying we are we are crumbling, and it's because of we needed a scapegoat. It's these guys. If you help me get rid of these guys, we can make Germany great again. And that was the desperation and fear mentality that rounded everybody up to cause the problem in the first place. I did like the dualistic cat and mouse kind of chase, between the two groups trying to get him, though. That was pretty good. I liked that a lot.
Yeah, it works really. It works very good on a lot of levels. Like, it works very good as a straight up crime procedural. I mean, as sort of a suspense film, it works very well. Like, where they're tracking him in the building, it is very suspenseful, and you actually kind of feel sorry for Peter Lorre's character, where he's being hounded down. And you're right, it does show Germany in very dire straits. Everything looks dingy and dirty. The streets, even the wide ones, the way he shoots this film, they look kind of cramped, claustrophobic. Going back to where it's silence and then it comes back to sound, the scene where Peter Lorre's character is tagged with the M on his coat and he's fleeing from the criminals, that's all in silence. And then it picks up back in sound after he escapes from the streets and gets into a building, essentially. And it's very tense and very well done, and it feels very claustrophobic, and you can see it. You can see it come right out of Lorre's performance. He is just sweating and nervous and jittery, and you can feel the walls closing in on him just through his physical performance alone. There is one scene in a bar. Everything is dingy and dirty, and it does not look good at all. So it really does speak to the poverty of the place. And
there's that long tracking shot that I think is one of the greatest shots in the film that kind of goes through that whole like seedy, dingy underbelly establishment. I liked that a lot.
It passes through the tables.
And you know what? I think that also speaks to the sort of rapport that the inspector has with the people, because the inspector realizes that a lot of these people that are now sort of intertwined with this criminal element are not necessarily bad people. They're just in really dire circumstances. So that's kind of why, like, he knows these people. He probably knew these people before they sort of fell into this kind of depression and stuff.
Got a Les Miserables.
Yeah. So, I mean, there is a kind of, like, the inspector has he is actually, like, very sympathetic to, like, a lot of these people, and he's trying to do well, and at the same time he's got to sort of balance the fact that he's kind of looked down as the enemy at the same time, and I really like it. It's very subtle, but it's very well done, and, I mean, there's nothing that I'm not impressed by in this film. Like, it's one of those films that it lives up to the hype. Like, there's really not much I can say. I can't really think of anything major I'd even point out that I can complain
How many pieces of art in general, not just films, but how many pieces of art in general hold up after 85 years?
Yeah. I mean, this is just a really smart film and really smartly made, and it was smart for Fritz Lang to make it not necessarily so overly advert that he would be killed for it, I mean...
I suspect he pushed it about as far as he could. It feels that way.
They banned the film in 1934. So, I mean, within a couple of years, this film was gone from the public for quite a while. Mm-hmm. There were shitty, like, 98-minute prints and stuff floating around for the longest time. I think it wasn't until, like, around after the remake, which we'll be talking about here soon, that it really sort of started to come into prominence again, where people started seeing it again. This film is now widely available, not only because it's public domain, but because you can get it in really good versions. The 110-minute restored version, which is still missing some stuff. Like, there is a couple of missing scenes. There is a well-known missing scene in this of a sort of prank call to the police of someone trying to confess of being the murderer who is actually not the murderer. So there's even a bit of a even smarter little kind of look at how some people react to a killer on the loose or whatever, all these fake calls into the police. I did it, I'm a killer, like trying to gain fame off of a actual killer. This was released, and I paid a pretty penny for it too, but the Criterion DVD from 2005, which is the best restored version, essentially 110 minutes, which there really isn't any other version that's longer than that. And it was released, I believe, in 2010 or so for Blu-ray. So you can get it, and There's a couple different Blu-rays out there, not just Criterion, but it is out there. Honestly, and I think we'll get into it here in a minute, but the only special feature that is lacking on this is actually the remake from '51. That should be on this. Criterion released The Killers, and they had the remake on that as a special feature, essentially. Why not do it with fucking the remake?
The one thing I could say before you move on, I didn't really talk about the ending a little bit, but the thing that you guys didn't mention, because you looked into it into a different aspect, into a different light, and you were looking more into the Juden population of Germany at the time, and coinciding with that, one of the things that I noticed in the film that I got out of it is the dualistic aspects of everything, and he wanted to keep you on both sides of the fences the whole time, and I believe that is number one reason why it was a child killer, because it plays with our senses a little bit more than just a woman murderer or just a random murderer. He keeps you on the side of the police and the side of the mob at the same time. There's no one time when I felt I was on one side or the other, because you're fighting for the idea of civility and justice, but at the same time you hurt inside, because as a father I know these things, and I would kill anyone who hurt my kid. They would never go to a policeman. I would kill them.
Well, I think
that is very polarizing in this film.
Yeah, well, I think that just sort of speaks back to what I was sort of mentioning there, where there is no real main character in this film, where I think it presents all the sides kind of equally throughout the film to a certain degree. So it doesn't try to give you like a leading man to garner your sympathy with. Where
I was bouncing back the whole time between the two. Even when the police were killing themselves in a room filled with smoke. That was the funniest scene. When the only reason I finally worked out that was not the same meeting at the same time, because it took me a little bit, was one room was literally like there was a bonfire in the middle of it.
Well, yeah, that was a subtle cut, wasn't it? Like where it cut between the police and it cut between the officials and the police and stuff, and the actual criminals planning to capture this guy.
Yeah, the only reason I finally I worked out very quickly though, but everyone in the police was smoking something, and the room was filling with smoke more and more every second, and I'm like, that is hilarious.
Yeah. So I think we all are pretty much in agreement here, and I think it's pretty obvious that we all love this film. We think it's pretty fucking great. Do you want to start off talking about the remake there, Daniel, since you actually kind of introduced us to it? Because I was not aware that this existed. So.
Sure. I actually wasn't either. I was doing, again, my kind of cursory research on this film. Actually, I do want to just one more thing I'll say about the original, just is that the title, the full title is actually M, A City Looks for a Murderer. And you keep you're kind of pointing out that there's not a lead in this film. It's about the city. It's about this oppressive environment.
It's about society.
It's about society. And I think that's the key thing that we keep kind of coming back to. There's not a lead in this film. There's an antagonist, but there's no real protagonist. So
well, even at the end of the film, it made me so angry was like I got this weird vibe of it's no one's fault. You know what I mean? They never put the blame on the murderer the whole time. No, and it gave that society kind of view of, no, you don't have to take personal responsibility for your ability, for your actions. It's not your fault. Don't worry about it. Oh, we'll just put you away or this or that. It just makes even the end that it's not going to help anything. We need to people need to take better care of their children. I'm like, it's the parents' fault that the murderer killed them. What the hell's wrong with you? And I left angry. I left happy because the film is very, very good. But I left angry at the same time.
Well, I don't think honestly the film places blame on anyone. I think it makes a point that it's so nuanced that you can't. You actually have to make up your mind on your own on who you think is in the right or in the wrong, or at least in the middle somewhere, right?
Well, it's very nice to get a film that makes your brain work that much. It's very nice.
I feel like, and here's where I'm of two minds about this, and I don't know the answer to this, because Lang can't possibly. I mean, today in 2016, we don't even have the idea of like having to tell parents to watch their children is almost like comical. Like that's just not something. And so you do kind of go, in 31, was this something that people were like concerned about? Is this like kind of a cultural? Was there this epidemic of like parents essentially not paying attention to their kids and their kids were getting hurt?
Well, the other side, we had a very bad maybe in the 30s, but in America and in other places, the kids were going to the workshops at 8. You know what I mean? There was that very bad part of society there.
Well, I think
the other side would be maybe the lesson is so obvious. Maybe it's like, parents, take care of your children. It's a little bit like, maybe the point is to kind of give this like very obvious reading for the censors, for like the moral busybodies who are so that they would ignore the much more complex and nuanced political meaning that was actually going on underneath.
Oh well,
a little bit like ending the film and going like, and remember, kids, don't smoke.
Yeah, right.
Well,
remember, kids, don't smoke.
I've always sort of taken it as a parents look out for your kids as a metaphor of common German people. Be aware of your surroundings and what is actually happening in your society right now. Yeah. That's what I took it as, because throughout the whole film you see the subtext of this is the way German society is going. Nazism is on the rise. I always felt it was a very subtle way of saying they're using the look out for your kids as a metaphor for actually look out at what is happening to your society and do something.
Children are the future, and you're ruining the future by brainwashing them into this evil.
Well, no, not even that. Like, honestly, I think the whole look out for your kids thing wasn't necessarily a problem. I just think it was.
So me is fine with brainwashing them into an evil society.
No.
I want to give you a kiss.
Here's what I'm saying. I'm saying it was a smokescreen for the underlying theme of people that you do not want to be taking power right now are taking power, and you're not paying attention to it.
You're not looking at it.
Yeah, it's a metaphor for you're not watching your children, you're not watching these people around you who are taking power and are going to ruin society.
While people are scared because of an Ebola outbreak, everything goes to shit around you because you're not paying attention. Well, no, that's recently. Never mind. Sorry.
Yeah. But I don't know. That's just my take on it. But
I like that take. It reminds me a little bit of Kurosawa's Stray Dog, where there's this very explicit message of this is at the end of the war, obviously. So this is almost 20 years later, and this is Kurosawa makes a point of saying these children are the future of Japanese society. These children, so we need to put our resources into making them grow to be better people, and like better people than we were. Essentially, is kind of what the film would argue in some ways. Only here in M we're getting it at the beginning. We're getting before this comes up, and like, you guys, things are fucked up right now. Think of your kids. Let's not go into this horrible totalitarian state. And then nobody listened.
And no one listened, and that's what happened. Yeah.
If people had listened to M, then.
and we should do Stray Dog at some point. But I will say Stray Dog definitely deals with basically a displaced generation of Japanese after the war, and it's like, we have to deal with the fact that our society has been dramatically changed by this war. Like, we've actually, like, for the most part, the Japanese populace was basically just thrusted out of the Middle Ages, because I mean they were a very technologically advanced society in World War II, like, to a certain extent. The majority of their populace was still living in like feudal Japanese conditions to a certain degree. And it was like a big, massive change where all of a sudden they had the Americans coming in, restructuring their society, driving their society to a certain direction, and you had all these war veterans and scarred, traumatized people coming back into society. And I'm just going to shut up now because we need to talk about that movie at some point. But back to 1951's M there, Daniel. Continue on.
Sorry, I completely got us sidetracked in the middle of a sentence there, but So in my cursory research for the 31M, I'd always kind of thought like there is this question, in terms of like, how do we criticize these things? How do we talk about artifacts from other cultures? Like, do we take the new critical approach, where we look at these things with fresh eyes and try to interpret the art as it exists and what it means to us and kind of have a personal interpretation of it, or should we view it as something that is based in a particular time and place? And I think Lang's M is pretty much the epitome of this is a film that you cannot ever divorce from its time and place. In order to understand this film, you have to understand that it was made in 1931 and in the rise of Nazism. That's the only way to understand this film. And then you go, well, what would this film look like if it wasn't made during that time? What would the kind of ordinary quote unquote version of this film look like? And then it turned out it was made 20 years later. There was an American version. There was an American remake, and I found that, and I thought, well, I have to watch this just to see. And it turns out I didn't write a full plot summary because what's the point of writing the same plot summary twice? It's largely the same film. There are subtle differences, which there are some profound differences, but basically it's the same film, and it just turns into a pretty effective little crime film.
It's really good.
It's not the 51 version is really well done. I mean, I was kind of expecting to watch 10 minutes of it and turn it off because it was a piece of shit, and it isn't at all. I said to you off air, if the 31 version didn't exist and all we had was this version, you'd kind of remember it as this little, underrated noir classic.
Yeah.
It's only the fact that the original exists and it's such a monument of cinema that I think the 51 version has been so buried.
In the 51 version, with the breakdown of the criminal at the end, I mean, that harkens back to misguided hate from a mother when it breaks down the psychosis, and you see that. I mean, I don't know if that's the first film that really broke that down, but you see that in countless films after that.
Oh yeah.
This is pre-Psycho. This is before Norman Bates.
This is 9 years before Psycho.
Yeah, this is. I think the most, other than the ending, the biggest difference in this focuses on the killer a lot more. You see this guy all the time in the film. It follows him. Mm-hmm. And you see psychosis a lot more, with the taking of the ties for the shoes and stuff, the shoestrings, and that stuff. It's much more on the nose that this guy is a psychotic.
It's a lot more like serial killer movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
I kind of like that they sort of went that direction with this because I mean you're up against M, you're up against Peter Lorre's performance, and it's you can't really reproduce that, so you got to put a different angle on it, and I think they did a really great job.
I mean, I do like the killer's breakdown in 51 as well. I mean, it does get very emotional too. I mean, it doesn't try to mirror. I don't know. It does a very good job as well. It just, as you said, it takes a completely different angle. And the breaking down of the psychosis, why he's like that, it's very good, and it does harken back to millions of films after that. I notice it does have more of that Yankee GI music in it, though, so you don't get the silence like you do in the 31.
Well, this movie is definitely an American movie, but I think it's pretty remarkable how easily they transition the story from 1930s Germany to 1950s era USA, where you have the whole sort of House of Un-American Activities Committee thing going on, which is sort of the big thing here. That basically takes the place of the Nazism of the original.
Later, we still get McCarthyism, and it still blackballs people for nothing, and so it didn't listen either.
Well, they're talking about the sort of communism McCarthyism thing, which is actually something that actually kind of directly affected this film. This film kind of dropped out of the fucking public's eye just after it was released. Essentially, that's one of the reasons why no one knows about this film. It was just kind of shit canned, essentially. Mm-hmm. Some of the people involved in the production of this were actually victims of the House of Un-American Activities Committee. So
the director Joseph Losey actually had to leave the country because he was being hounded by HUAC at that point, which is a shame. Actually, I did some research. I did again, just looking into this film a little bit. The director had previously directed a few years earlier a children's comedy musical film called The Boy with Green Hair. which is apparently about essentially it's an extended metaphor for communism, because this boy wakes up one morning and he has green hair and everybody's making fun of him and like ostracizing him and everything. And I'm trying to track that down and watch it, so I'll give you guys a little view of it next week. But
nice.
Kind of strange that Joseph Loosely gets basically the same treatment that Fritz Lang got as well. He was getting, he was like, okay, I gotta get the fuck out of here, if you know what I mean. That's strange.
Well, when you have political powers who are using authoritarian rule to get rid of it they disagree with, it kind of doesn't matter,
there's a lot of that same mob mentality here with the sort of McCarthyism thing. I mean, you had fucking assholes like Ronald Reagan fucking testifying on his fellow actors and stuff. Oh yeah, he's a communist. We should fucking get him out of the fucking country or whatever. Like, that shit was going on. But also, it's kind of interesting how this one sort of incorporates sort of modern stuff. Like, it uses the sort of general panic and mob mentality. It sort of makes a sort of correlation between that and television, how sort of mass media was kind of like infecting the country at that time.
Yep.
So you see a lot of that. I mean, there's a little exchange where police are asking certain witnesses, like, did you see him? And like the woman's like colorblind. It's like, I don't know what the color was. Maybe it was red. What are you, a commie?
Well, what's funny, that scene is mirrored from one in the original, but then they had that kind of communist angle to it, to the remake. One of the biggest differences in the film is the fact that in the 51 version, the killer actually has a young girl with him while he's running from the criminal, the dragnet that's coming after him. Actually, they're not criminals. They're just they're not beggars. They're actually just foot soldiers in the criminal organizations, I guess, in the remake. So that's the difference. But the fact that he has a young girl with him, and you're kind of actively thinking, what's he going to do to this girl while he's...
Yeah, I thought he was going to... I was actually wondering, is this film going to go there? Is he going to kill her? And when they break into the room, are they going to see, like, the girl's legs poking out from, like, behind a table or something? Like... I was like, wow, if they went that far,
there's a definite dread to that. I mean, it definitely pushes a lot harder on that. I mean, in the original, I mean, while we know that Laurie is the murderer and we are rightfully supposed to think of him in terrible ways, I think that the remake pushes a lot harder on that. This is a bad guy. It's good that we're coming after him.
Right.
Which, again, kind of then plays up that... Well, and then he's being hounded by, it's essentially this metaphor for the, kind of communist witch hunts and that sort of thing. I mean, it would be interesting to see. Watching the 51 version, I started thinking, I wish this had been a film that had been remade every 20 years. Like, imagine what the 1971 version would have been like. It would have been about the hunt for hippies,
Yeah.
In 91, it would have been about, like, crack cocaine, In 2001, it would have been on...
There would at least would have been an orgy in it, for God's sakes.
Sure. In 2001, imagine Jess Franco directing M in 1971.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Soledad Miranda.
After 2000, it would be the Islamophobia, which it is now, which is actually.
Well, I think if it was Jess Franco doing it, it would be Soledad Miranda walking around naked for most of the film. It's like, we got a plot here somewhere.
That's the question with this film: is it pre or post Miranda? I mean, that's the question.
Yeah.
That's really the question. Yeah. But it is interesting to kind of think about, like, if this had been a movie that really was remade every couple of decades, what kind of thing
could be, like, in a way, because that would be so pertinent that it would almost should be, in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see it. It's funny how not terrible the 51 version is. I don't have a lot to say about it because I feel like we kind of covered a lot of this in the 31 version, but it's worth tracking down if you've only seen the original. I mean, if you're only going to watch one, watch the original, no question. Yeah. But the 51 version is absolutely worth watching. It's not a terrible movie at all.
No, it's shot.
In fact, it's quite good.
It's shot really well too. Like, looking at how it's shot with, like, seeing the city and stuff, like, it looks really great. The sequence where they're chasing the kill in the building, in this case they used the Bradbury building, which was later used for Blade Runner as well. It's got kind of like a French architecture to it, which is very very eye-catching. It's got those sort of Z form kind of fucking sharp angle staircases and stuff going up and everything. looks really cool. It's kind of interesting, like, during the time that this was done, this was also produced by Seymour Nebenzahl, who produced the original. And during this time, he actually re-released M, although it was, like, I think in the sort of edited form, like 98 minutes, where the fuck it was. And it was changed a lot. Like, they changed, like, the title sequence to the original. They changed the music in some cases. Like, they instead of just having Peter Lorre whistle in the Hall of the Mountain King, they actually had it in the soundtrack. And they actually had like a happy ending, and they removed all the stuff that made the government look like a bunch of foolish buffoons.
Mm-hmm.
So it was definitely catered to like an American audience.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of times, I mean, if you don't watch this and you don't look into it, it's not really, one of those films that if a person isn't looking for it, they might not notice that it's all about the government. I don't know a lot of people that wouldn't get little bits of it, but there are some people, I'm assuming, that would watch this film and not. It was just the people after a child murder, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And because you automatically identify, well, this isn't the guy who just believes in something. This is a guy who kills kids. So he's a bad guy. We got to go after him and go kill him. You know what I mean? And then you really have to talk more about what's right and what's wrong near the end of the film. So even if you're not looking for political banter, you still have a morality issue by the end of it where you have to pick and choose, which is no matter who you are, you have to watch this film and you have to look into yourself at some point in time.
Well, it's also interesting. Definitely one big difference in the remake. The head of the criminal syndicate in the original was definitely presented like as an overt Nazi. Here, the criminals are just presented as straight up American gangsters. They're not presented as
they're practically businessmen. Like they're really. It's. I mean.
Yeah, and also, hey, Raymond Burr as the sort of raspy-voiced, heavy guy, the enforcer in the gang. I like that. I like finding out that he was in this. They actually changed the story up at the end to the point where it's actually the government officials in collaboration with the criminals who are the actual villains in this one, like the mayor or whatever, who's trying to improve his standing in the political field. So that's where the sort of McCarthyism thing comes down, where essentially that's what McCarthy was doing as well, sort of like garnering power and prestige in the public eye with his fucking bullshit. So they make a point of that with this sort of buffoonish mayor who is trying to use machinations and improve his public image by capturing this criminal or this killer or whatever and stuff. There's definitely some overt changes there, as well as the defense attorney for the killer in the end.
Yeah, because he's basically just a drunk, and he's not in the original. The defense attorney is actually kind of trying to get the guy off. I mean, and here he's very reluctant. He's like, no, I'm and that can speak to the ineffectualness of the court systems in a way.
Well, I think deep down, like, maybe I was just reading too much into this character, but I was watching him, and he becomes, like, a central character in the last act, like, in the last 15 minutes of the film or so. He all of a sudden becomes a central character. I kind of felt that this guy, deep down, was, like, the only sort of idealist in the whole picture. It kind of felt like he was kind of a metaphor for, like, the sort of idealist and the sort of oppressive, restrictive 1950s American society being beaten down by the system he was part of. In the end, he's beaten down to the point where he becomes a drunk, and then when he finally tries one last grasp of trying to, be a good person, he gets shot for it. Essentially, So I thought there were some pretty really interesting and smart differences made in the end.
Very interesting that you mentioned that, because I was watching the original thinking the guy was going to get killed the whole time for trying to stand up for the guy. That was very interesting. One of the more principled people in the film, I love his line that, "You cannot silence me." You know what I mean? Like, this will not silence me. And he keeps going, and it's like, you can't silence justice. I mean, that kind of mentality. It's pretty interesting. Because at first, when I saw the guy at his defense, I thought it would be more of a joke, more of a, hey, Yeah, you gonna kill him yet? I mean, one of those kind of things. And it turned out he was his basis of saving the person was it's just really weird. It's one of the ones that's one of the things that gives you it's the end so much emotion besides Peter's rant.
Yeah.
And of course the rant in the 51 version as well
is also really well done. Like he doesn't try to outdo Peter Lorre, but he does a great job at the same time.
He does.
He brings a much more quiet, like resigned almost attitude towards it, which I think is
well. It's great because it shows you that I'm not a monster. I'm a quiet, resigned, weak human. But I do these things anyway. And that's really the scary part. That's what the Norman Bates character was so well in Psycho.
Mm-hmm.
He's not Jason Voorhees. You know what I mean? That kind of mentality. He's just the boy next door. And I think Psycho took a lot from that.
Yeah, like I was watching this. I was thinking like, there's a lot of Norman Bates there. Like there's only like one shot where you see him in his apartment, and you see that framed picture of his mother. And he's like, I assume that's his mother, and he's pulling at the shoe ties, and then eventually he like chops the head off of that, strangles the head off of that clay doll he has of a little girl, and
that wasn't just a little bit too obvious.
Yeah, both feels kind of gimmicky, but at the same time I like it where. Instead of doing the Hall of the Mountain King whistling, he's like playing a little pipe and is like kind of a Pied Piper almost kind of motif going on there. I thought it didn't do anything to disgrace the original. Like it stands up on its own. It makes a lot of good points on its own that the original film made in its time, and I think it was one of the more effective examples of a remake doing it right. Even if Criterion couldn't restore it, like if they couldn't find a good print, they should have still stuck it on like the release for M because it's a really good counterpiece to the original. So
watch them both. Check them both out.
I think the 51 is on YouTube somewhere, isn't it? I'm pretty sure it is.
And they're easy to spell.
I know the original is on YouTube at least, and you can find pretty good prints on YouTube. There's like 3 or 4 versions of it on YouTube.
Yeah, there's at least 2.
Yeah, and like I said, you can get the super cleaned up Blu-ray version from Criterion at this point. If you want to pay out the ass, you can fucking get the DVD like I did. At this point, it's almost like I should upgrade to fucking Blu-ray player because I'm being punished for seeking out DVDs at this point. But
send me all your DVDs, Lee.
Yeah, no, it's not going to happen, Paul. Sorry. Yeah, hand me all your VHSs, Paul.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
You would murder me before I fucking.
You're so crazy, baby. You're crazy.
All right, so I think we pretty much said all we need to say about these films. They're both
1 out of 10s.
Yeah. No, I would actually rate both of these as excellent fucking films and actually kind of classics of their era. Honestly, like the 1951 is just kind of a woefully forgotten classic of its era that should be seen by more people, I think. And, Daniel, tell us about your Doctor Who podcast.
Absolutely. Sorry, I was actually just looking to see if the 1951 version of M was available anywhere, and you can buy a DVD for $6 on Amazon. And there are other ways to get it, but... there is a DVD available on Amazon.
Yeah, it probably looks exactly the same as the torrent you found us, so there you go.
Yeah, the less legal way that I found it, so enjoy that too. So if you do want to listen to me talk with my wife about old science fiction television show, you should check us out on Oi Spaceman, a Doctor Who love story, because we talk about Doctor Who, and we're up to the 80s from the 5th Doctor era, and Lee was supposed to be on the next episode, but scheduling didn't allow that recording to happen in quite the same way, but we're going to get him on soon, and we'll figure it out. But I think the next episode I'm going to put up will be our Series 9 recap, so look forward to that.
Right on.
And we have a guest for that, too, so.
Oh, cool.
Oi Spaceman, oispaceman.libsyn.com. Check it out.
Yeah. Paul, where can people find you on the old interwebs?
You like hearing beer reviews? Check me out on PA Brew News, YouTube, and Facebook. Bye.
Now with more bleach.
Now with more bleach.
Now with less communism.
Never. Consume, obey.
Yeah, exactly. That's another film we'll have to fucking do at some point. Yeah, so the trailer will tell you where to go. We're on iTunes. Please go to fucking iTunes, subscribe to us, leave us a 5-star rating. Tell us how much we suck or tell much how much you love us, but leave us a 5-star rating at the same time. That'll be great because that'll get us out to more people, and that's what we're looking forward to. Leave us comments and questions. Leave us suggestions for films you want us to review because we're definitely open to that. Like, I think if you've been following this podcast for any amount of time now, you see that we're pretty varied in the stuff we watch, so it's not all just horror, it's not all just this or that.
Sadly.
We definitely... yeah. Paul would just love it to be all horror, but I mean, if you want to suggest horror films, that'll make Paul very happy, and if you want to make Paul happy, do it. Yeah, but you can find the contact info on our Podbean site. Go there. And, next week is going to be, or at least, at the very least, the next episode, whenever we do it, should be next week. Dawn of the Dead from 1978, going to be the big fucking 50th episode blowout. We're going to blow our loads. It's going to be all downhill from there. So enjoy while it lasts, people. Yeah. And thank you, Daniel, and thank you, Paul, for joining me.
Thanks for letting us be here.
Yeah.
He's got the right response, yeah.
And thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you all next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight. For our other episodes, links to Daniel, Paul, and Lee's other stuff, and links to some great podcasts of similar interest, visit us at tmbdos.podbean.com. There you can leave us comments on the site or directly email us. We listen and respond to everything. Thank you. Drive through.